We're now 24 minutes after the hour. Time to go on the docket with attorney John Patrick Dolan.
And you know, the big case that everybody's talking about right now, Jodi Arias case, they're continuing deliberations today. So how long do you think it'll take before we get a verdict?
It could be anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of weeks. The interesting thing, they just went out Friday afternoon, and they probably just elected a foreman because they had about an hour. The interesting question will be, what level of homicide do they find her to be guilty of? I don't think there's any question that she's going to be found guilty of something. The real question is it going to be first degree? Is it going to be second degree? Is it going to be manslaughter? If it's first degree with the special circumstances, then they'll have a second phase, which is the penalty phase, and she will face the death penalty or life without possibility. If it's anything less than that, then the judge, probably 30, 60 days down the road, will sentence her. It's been a strange thing because it's rare that you see a trial where a defendant is on the stand for 18 days, and then there's another 2 weeks after that of rebuttal. And there's no question in my mind that they approve that Jodi Arias has some mental health issues. The question is whether or not that comes to bear on the jury's decision about the level of homicide.
Now, there's quite a bit of criticism out there on the defense team. You know, some people say the defense lawyers didn't do a great job with the closing arguments. So I'm kind of curious, what would you have done differently if you were representing Jodi Arias?
Well, I don't know that I've done anything differently, and I always get concerned about people that second-guess lawyers because they're not sitting in the chair. The one thing I probably would have done is emphasize the heat of passion argument for voluntary manslaughter versus the self-defense. Both of those are ways to get to a voluntary manslaughter, imperfect self-defense they call it, or heat of passion. Everybody agrees that it was a rage killing, and a rage killing sounds to me like heat of passion, and while there was comments periodically about that, it wasn't the thrust of the defense case, so I might have done that a little bit differently, but otherwise I think they did a pretty darn good job considering what they had to work with.
What about the Boston bombing case? You know, one brother, he's in court. What's going on there?
Well, you know, the brother that died, I just read in the paper this morning, the city of Cambridge is refusing to allow him to be buried in the city. Right. That's a whole other story with a whole other series of consequences. The brother that still lives apparently is cooperating, and now his friends, who when they heard about this thought they better clean out his dorm room, are in trouble because there's something called accessory after the fact. His friends obviously didn't have anything to do with this. They didn't make bombs, they didn't prepare to harm people, but they did try to hide his backpack, which had some used fireworks where they pulled some gunpowder, and they did a couple of other things which put them in a position of being legally liable for what they call accessory after the fact. And in the federal system, that's akin to obstruction of justice, and you could get up to 5 years and a $500,000 fine for that. I think those boys are now being debriefed as well, and if their lawyers do a good job, they probably won't be punished to too severe an extent, although we still don't know exactly how much help they had or exactly how much they knew when this took place. So it's a story that's unfolding, and I think we're going to see a lot more in the next couple of weeks.
We definitely are. We look forward to seeing what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And lastly, Michael Jackson case, they're back in court, and I understand that the judge was actually restricting the number of Jackson siblings that would be allowed in court at the same time. Why is that?
Well, because there's only so many people you can have in court, and of course most people most lawyers believe that the number of family members can influence the jury. Remember, this is a jury trial in a civil case about whether or not AEG made a mistake or is liable for the hiring of Dr. Murray. And of course, the defense for AEG is saying, hey, wait a minute, Michael Jackson picked Dr. Murray. He's the guy who was getting treated even before we started to talk to him. The Jackson family is saying, yeah, but you had a contract with him. They're saying, but the contract wasn't signed. They're saying, yeah, but they were performing on the contract. So there's these arguments going back and forth. And the family in there sometimes can affect the jury's decision making because they keep looking over at the sort of famous people. Yeah. So I think that's the reason why the AEG defense is asking to limit the number of family members. But this is high stakes poker. I mean, these are billions of dollars they're talking about in this case. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Wow. All right, John, thank you for joining us so early on this Monday morning. We'll see you again next week. There's John Patrick Dolan's information. If you want to find out more about him, his services, DolanLawOffices.com. 28 minutes after the hour, coming up on